Okay, it's 12:05. We're gonna get started. My name is Juann Khoory. I chair the Roundtable on shelter and housing for homeless population, and this is our Roundtable number 8. We've been doing this for 2 years and a half, and today we're very excited to bring in United Way of Massachusetts Bay and Merrimack Valley, Christi Staples, Vice President, Policy and Government Relations, and Sarah Bartley, Vice President, Safe and Stable Housing. And today's topic, we are going to try to focus on the topic of supportive housing, how United Way has been doing a lot of work in raising awareness, creating programs and resources for people who wants to get involved. And we geared this session to architects in particular, so they'll be talking and to you as architects, and hopefully you learn something from it. This is a slide just to show very quickly the difference. We always show this between we showed it last time and this time between shelter and supportive housing because they're two different things, and it's pretty much self-explanatory, and you'll learn more about it through the session. And basically where we would like to have the population be more independent in their housing situation. And these are some of the successful examples of supportive housing, and some of them are in mixed use where they're done with developers, so they're mixed with low income apartments, and some of them like the Brockton Father Bills, it's only for supportive housing. So we'll talk about more about these projects in our next session, but we bring this slide just to show you how this is a true typology, and it is happening and it is very much in need. At this point, I'd like to give the presentation back to United Way, to Sarah and Christi. So I'm gonna stop sharing, and because we're a small group, maybe we go around, introduce ourselves, and have the session be more interactive than formal presentation, if that's okay with everyone.
Absolutely. I mean, I would love that, where we like to be able to hear from you all. We've got a couple ideas for questions towards the end. So yeah, would love if you're open to having people introduce themselves. I see Emily and Kim have already introduced themselves, architects, in the chat. I think whatever people feel comfortable with, if you're not in a place to unmute, feel free to put in the chat. But if you are in a place where you can unmute, would love to have you briefly introduce yourselves to us before Christi and I introduce ourselves to you.
Yeah, hi, my name's Kim Barnett. I'm a architect and principal at LDA. We have been trying to expand our work with affordable housing and supportive housing. Actually, we had a great conversation with Father Bills just a couple weeks ago for something that we were looking into. So when we saw this event come up, we thought it would be a great time to just learn more from experts on the other side of the table. So that's what we're here for.
Fantastic.
I say we because Jillian and I work together.
Hi, everyone. I'm
Nice to be here.
Jillian. Yeah, I'm Jillian Barisic. I work with Kim on a lot of these, on some of these projects, and also very interested in the topic as well. Also on the architecture side.
Welcome.
Hi, Emily here. I'm a retired architect, but am very interested in this topic, and am looking forward to learning a lot more than I currently know.
Welcome.
Awesome. Great. Christi, why don't you start doing intros while I bring up the slides, and then I'll go after you.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having a lunch hour with us. Really appreciate it. So I'm Christi. I am, as was mentioned earlier, the Vice President of Policy and Government Relations for United Way. But more important to this conversation, before I came to United Way, I was the New England Regional Director at the Corporation for Supportive Housing, which is a national organization that is specifically focused on, as the name indicates, supportive housing. So we did technical assistance, policy advocacy, everything kind of soup to nuts. We did some plans. We worked closely with architects, a lot of new market tax credits, low income tax credit deals, a lot of the capital stack side of projects. And so I did that for about 6 years before I came to United Way. So bring a technical expertise around supportive housing, in addition to some other policy lenses, particularly here in Massachusetts through the Affordable Homes Act, which is exciting. And I hope we get to touch upon a little bit if time permits. So thanks for having us.
Yeah. And well, I'm Sarah Bartley. Christi and I are both part of this team you see on the screen. Those are our colleagues. Waving hello to you. I liked the idea that our whole team could wave hello to you, not just the two of us. But so I lead our safe and stable housing team, and we're part of obviously a bigger crew at United Way, where all of us really share a vision to advance this region as one that is prosperous, but where prosperity is shared across race and ethnicity. And we've really identified a number of avenues to the well-being and shared prosperity of our region. One of those is safe and stable housing. So I represent that team that focuses really on the systems changes needed to make safe, stable housing available across all the populations that need it. So that's who we are. That's what we do. And greetings to you from our whole staff. Really nice to be with you. So yeah, we're gonna have an opportunity to present to you today what we do at United Way, and we're gonna kind of focus in more specifically around deeply affordable and supportive housing. Know that it's part of this larger vision and mission of ours as an organization. So we're gonna try to both give you some tools for how we talk about what it is that we are really running towards as an organization around housing. And then also just invite you into the conversation to hear how you might want to be part of this work and how we could uplift and bolster the work that you all are interested in too. So that's what we are looking to do today. So I'm going to dive in and just give you a handful of slides to sort of talk about housing and why we focus on it. And then we'll kind of get into some of that other material. And Christi and I'd love to go back and forth and share some of the recent opportunities that we think we have, and then also hear from you too. So let's see, here we go. So what we do is we run towards hard things in Massachusetts. It's something we're known for. We're not afraid to run towards hard things if it means that we can take care of each other better. We want to sort of draw on what we do well as a state. You know, when we realized that many of our neighbors were suffering for lack of access to the same healthcare that many of us enjoy, we did something about it. We fixed it before anyone else in the nation did, and became a model for the nation. That's something that we did, a win that we have as a state. And now I think what we're excited about is that many are beginning to realize and actually take steps to resolve that housing isn't working for us. It's not serving us well. From the governor's office to town meeting, so many of us are making both hard and necessary choices that we need to ensure that housing continues to be abundantly part of our future as a state. With that sort of momentum on our side, and we can talk more later about what that momentum is, but with that on our side, we at United Way, we really believe that now is when we need to make sure that everyone will benefit from the housing investments that we are making, including especially those who have the most to gain from housing, those who are our neighbors who are experiencing homelessness. We know that if we don't uplift everyone along with us, if everyone isn't sort of part of the housing investments we're making, we're gonna lose their dreams for the future. We talk regularly with people experiencing homelessness who tell us what their dreams are for the jobs that they want to work, the schools they want to enroll their kids in, to have Sunday dinner with their neighbors, to play cards in the park, to reconnect with family, to be able to engage in the kinds of services they're interested in with regularity, to be able to reunite with family members, to be able to focus on joy and meaning in their lives. We lose out on all of that. And so we don't want to leave anyone behind. That would be to lose the very core of who we are as a community. And so now is the time to ensure that all of our people in Massachusetts benefit from the hard work we're doing on housing by doubling down on our goals for both deeply affordable and supportive housing across the state as part of the housing investments that we're making. We know that as much as we believe in caring for our neighbors, that has not always been part of the legacy that we are left with. We know that we have had a legacy of housing segregation and other injustices that have particularly impacted Black and Brown neighbors from being able to dream about the future that they want and deserve. So whatever that means to you, whether that is unfair or discriminatory, even racist, what we say is that what matters is we solve it now, that our future and depends on it, and our ability to share in the prosperity of this region really depends on solving for housing. And so we always say there's great news that we can design the community that we want, that one that addresses those past injustices and really supercharges our investments in all of our people. So at United Way, what we're running towards is investing in deeply affordable and supportive housing so that everyone has the opportunity to contribute to our communities. So what that means to us is a healthy continuum of housing resources. That's the built environment. It's also the resources, the housing resources that exist to help people stay in their homes, right? Whether that's rental assistance or vouchers or actual units, the built environment, we know that we need a continuum of housing opportunities, and that when any of them are missing, so for us, particularly the deeply homelessness prevention, deeply affordable housing, supportive housing, when those pieces are missing in the continuum, that will mean we leave people behind. And so what we are running towards, what we're focused on, is making sure that we scale the supportive housing, the deeply affordable housing, the prevention opportunities that make sure we have that strong, healthy continuum of housing resources we need. And so why invest there? So why invest in those opportunities? We know that they're really fundamental to our success, that it puts us on a path to ending homelessness, helps us to fix those past injustices, improves our overall health systems, educational systems, strengthens our families and communities, builds safety nets for our young adults as well as our aging adults, and makes our communities safe and more peaceful for everyone. Many of the people you see on these slides have been part of our coalitions. And so these are real people whose lives were improved through deeply affordable and supportive housing. So why? We realize that when we scale supportive housing, it benefits our whole community. So our police, our justice systems able to devote their focus to community safety. Firefighters and EMTs can focus on keeping our whole community well. Hospitals can devote more time to emergency care, to doing what they do best. Schools, we know, can succeed. Everyone in our schools are more successful when students are deeply engaged and present because they live in housing, right? Rather than having to move frequently or reside in shelter. Makes our whole community stronger. And we know that we can be a leader. We have a governor, we have mayor, we have workforce systems that are both recognizing and asking for deeply affordable and supportive housing to be part of the picture of what we do here in each of our communities. And we know that it benefits people. So it's not just better for, for all of us, it's really especially better for people who need it most, right? So people who experience homelessness tell us that supportive housing, deeply affordable housing with services makes them feel safer, makes them safer, healthier, more peaceful, living more joyful lives, more able to engage with services, more able to engage as well in their own well-being and in being good neighbors to their neighbors. So it benefits individual people. Just to put a finer point on it that you may find interesting, we we would spotlight this 2020 study from Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Massachusetts Foundation, really finding that there was a preventative effect of supportive housing that leads to overall benefits around healthcare utilization and costs. So people use more healthcare and reduces their costs because they're engaging in preventative care. So that is good news for all of us, both in the well-being of our neighbors as well as very real savings. And we just spotlight, we have a once in a generation opportunity right now to put Massachusetts on a path to equity, resilience, and well-being by fully investing in housing. So we know we have the public's attention on this. It's in the news every day, right? We don't wake up without a headline about housing. We have the public's attention on housing and homelessness. What we're often lacking is solutions, and the beauty is we have one here. We've already generated a lot of momentum. There is agreement that these are the solutions. It's been part of the federal plan to end homelessness. So we know we are working out of what is evidence-based, what works. And we have some powerful new tools. We spotlighted this picture because this is the governor announcing the Affordable Homes Act. When we get later to talking about some recent wins, we'd love to highlight, we have some that are making their way through the levers of government right now. So what do we do at United Way? It'd be remiss if I made a case for deeply affordable housing and didn't talk about what we're doing. So what are we doing? United Way is really working across the spectrum of systems change, the levers of systems change to make deeply affordable and supportive housing more abundant in our communities. So we have many of the, as I said, many of the people whose faces you've been seeing are part of our coalition of people who've experienced homelessness themselves. So really listening to the community and uplifting community voice, hearing directly from and working with people who've experienced homelessness is a big part of our work. We make raise and distribute significant funding through philanthropic leadership. So really looking at new ways that philanthropy can be investing in solutions to get change, not just more of the same, but change. And really building networks of organizations working together, working on policy change and being a good public-private partner. So we are partnering with the administration to help them meet the moment of many people experiencing homelessness that need housing. And we work with research partners and community members to uplift evidence. Those are all things we do. What we want to focus in on a bit more is our Supportive Housing Pipeline Coalition, because that is where we work probably most directly with developers and who have architect teams. So we really wanted to kind of focus in as we go forward in talking about that particular coalition of that we engage in. So we serve as the backbone, the sort of lead core organization that partners with the Massachusetts Housing and Shelter Alliance, who I know you've also heard from, CHAPA, who we'd love to introduce you to if you haven't heard from them, as well as a number of other organizations, the Massachusetts Association for Mental Health and Western Massachusetts Network to End Homelessness. Many developers, you see a handful of them on here, a number of different healthcare partners, you see a couple of them on here, and many other organizations in the community that all have a stake in scaling supportive housing, all participate in this coalition. So I want to tell you a little bit about the coalition. So it's a growing coalition. More than 80 partners have a shared agenda. They've developed the agenda to scale supportive housing and have signed on to it. So it's really good news that Massachusetts leaders are coming together to create this agenda and to advocate together for supportive housing. And what are we doing? So what does the coalition actually do? So we, sorry, my slide got a little bit cut off. We're convening key leaders and sectors to develop that agenda, to advance a unified agenda for creating the supportive housing we need to end chronic homelessness. So those who have been homeless the longest, the most often, with the most number of barriers to safe and stable housing. We're setting bold and achievable goals that are leveraging goals the administration has already set for housing production. So, so setting goals for supportive housing within goals that are already being set, that we are already as a state working towards. We're leveraging a public-private partnership, so we get regular homelessness data, system-wide data, to understand how many people and to be able to plan and target our resources to the people that need it most. And so what have we found? We found that we need 10,000 supportive housing units to be developed as part of the goals the administration has set. So we know we are missing 200,000 housing units. As we work to develop those, we need to make sure that 40,000 of them are affordable, 20,000 are deeply affordable, and of those, 10,000 are matched with services and available as supportive housing for people to be able to exit homelessness and systems involvement and get the kinds of outcomes that we talked about earlier. So the last thing I'll say before I sort of, Christi and I could get into some discussion around some of the pieces of the coalition that we're really excited about. We also, as a coalition, are really thinking a lot about how we leverage insights from people who've experienced homelessness to make the supportive housing and deeply affordable housing we do develop even better. So I get really excited about this slide because this is a development in my neighborhood. Where I live. I happen to live in the city of Beverly. And this developer actually worked with a group of families who had experienced homelessness to ask them what they wanted in their building. And I think one of the things we think about is, you know, we have a current state right now where most of our housing is responsive to market studies, where it's built to meet the needs of funders that are investing in it. But we really imagine a future state where people who experience homelessness are able to add their ideas, that they're able to tell us what it is that they want. And when they do, they tell us that they're looking for a more diverse built environment. They want to live in the family sizes and that you know, with the people that they choose. They want the number of bedrooms that serves their families. Right, shocker, but that's hard to find. They want to live with green space, natural light, community gardens, many of the resources and amenities that they will benefit their lives. And so we really love the idea of inviting you all as architects into reimagining housing with us in collaboration with people who've experienced homelessness, because we know it gives us the power to create really diverse housing opportunities that help people to stay housed. So yeah, with that, I wanted to tag in Christi and all of you too into this discussion. What we wanted to talk about today is just how do we join together? How do we join forces in running towards these things together? This is who we are. This is what we're about, and wanted to be able to talk with you about how are you wanting to get involved? How are you already getting involved? It sounds like, and how can we help uplift the work that each other is doing?
Yeah, and I would also add to that. Thank you, Sarah. Great overview. I would just also add for the team on this call, understanding what you all are hearing on the ground. I know, Kimberly, you had mentioned some of the projects aren't penciling out, and how are you figuring out like how to make all of those pieces work? And the conversation with Father Bills, I'm sure, was really rich because they do the capital stacks and penciling out of deals all day long, and it's not easy. So wanted to just invite that feedback into the conversation too, as we think about both the policy and the system and the environment for making sure that supportive housing goals are set, that we're coming together with a collective advocacy strategy, and we're clear on what some of the barriers and opportunities are from you as architects, right? It's a little bit of a different perspective on the three legs of the supportive housing stool, as I always say. So I wanted to just open that and bring that into the question.
I don't know if I have an answer to that. I guess, you know, so we don't have a huge depth of affordable housing experience, but Jillian and I have been working most recently on a study actually aimed at helping a town sort of figure out what their next step is, you know, how to move forward. And I think the biggest challenge that we've found is there's sort of universal agreement that housing is good and there's not enough housing, and we should fix that. But being able to narrow in on what level of need one particular project versus another should address is challenging, because I think there's need at all levels. So when we are on the side of the table of trying to help identify what can be done in the physical world, it's hard for us to give advice on where to target the need to. And sometimes I feel like towns are looking for us for that feedback, when really maybe it should be coming from somebody like you, or a resource that's shared somehow. So I guess maybe that would be my answer to the question.
Yeah. Yeah, we often will say, like, we'll take the deepest affordability we can get, right? Because we know that when we build for people who have been historically excluded, we realize all kinds more benefits, right? There are gaps, like we focus on that particular part of the continuum for a reason. So yeah, if we can ever be of support in those conversations, I think we would be happy to be able to talk about, you know, what would be the benefit of being able to target a particular area without losing a project, right? Because the project, we need all, you're right, we need diverse kinds of housing, right? Like there are many opportunities, and we realize the most benefits when we're able to include people who have otherwise no access to housing, right?
Right, yeah. I mean, do you have a recommendation of, I think we're probably at the furthest away from the detail that you guys are at, you know, like, but if they're just sort of working with a town who has a site, who wants to move towards affordable housing there or supportive housing there, I mean, is there like a resource that people who don't know as much as you guys know can go to just sort of understand or give some start at like statistics or need based off of region or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the regional planning agencies can be very helpful in that regard. Although I do think, you know, there are lots of other ways to sort of look at the data. You know, not every community does an excellent job of understanding how many of their students are experiencing homelessness, but that can be a very local place to start for some communities to get some read on, like, I think a lot of communities see homelessness as a problem that's happening somewhere else and assume that if they build affordable housing, they're importing new people, when the reality is they may have many, many people in their community already that need affordable housing. So yeah, I would point people towards their own master plans or working with their regional planning agency to develop a master plan. I would also suggest like looking at their own regional data around, you know, their schools. They could look at, we could point them to other data sources as well to be able to understand how many people are cost burdened. The National Low Income Housing Coalition publishes good statewide data, but you know, the census is available and shows how many people are cost burdened, you know, more tightly by region or even community. So I think there are lots of ways to be able to look at numbers and say, gosh, we already have a lot of people here who need affordable housing, deeply affordable housing. And then I think there's also, you know, then matching that with the given site, right? To say, what are the unique aspects of this site that we could really leverage? Christi, what would you add in terms of pointing people?
Yeah, I guess I have a question around when you all come into the process. And I ask because I may have some suggestions based on how you answer that. And you may say it varies. So I'm just I'm learning your world also.
Yeah, I think it does vary. And I don't know if Emily or Greta or Jillian have other feedback. I mean, we've come into the process, like I was saying, Jillian and I are doing a study right now where we are paired up with a real estate advisor who focuses on affordable housing. So we have kind of looked at the site in terms of physically what's possible, zoning wise and stuff like that. And they're helping to create a pro forma of how could this be financially feasible. And so our study is like preceding any RFP to a developer or anything like that. It's sort of like the town is saying, we have this resource of land and we know housing is important, and could this land help solve that problem? But that's one end of the spectrum. And then the other end of the spectrum is either paired up with a developer who already has something in mind, and they come to us and say, we need an architect to design, you know, a 70 unit, you know, 3-story brick build, you know, fully kind of cooked
Yeah, yeah.
what they want. And we're just really executing the design. And because we don't have a huge breadth of experience in this, I don't know kind of all of the different variations of that between the two, but that's what we've seen.
That's helpful. Yeah. And so on the first point, right, where you're called in sort of in the beginning with this, we have a dream, we have a piece of land, we have some idea of what we need. A recommendation might be, how are we engaging the community? And I'm sure you all do this, right? And so what are the community's stated needs? What is it that you're feeling as a community are your pain points? And those are very, you know, they can range. Some people, if it's an urban development, may say that we're feeling that there's a tremendous amount of folks that are unhoused in our community, right? And so what does that look like? Some folks may say, we need more young families to come in, or families who can be in our police department, or whatever the community says, right? And then you can get a sense of what type of housing is going to be most, I don't want to say acceptable, but open to the community, right? I always like to do the community process because it gets you in the door early. Because if the answer is that we need to make sure that we have deeply affordable or a mixed use or supportive housing, you've started this process with the community voice, with the community needs right up front, because you probably most likely will get some pushback depending on where you end up. But just having that sort of really open conversation with whoever it is to make that suggestion, like, what does the community need? What are you kind of seeing? Would be one place I would recommend, always pushing that. There are also places where you can get data, as Sarah mentioned, that would help sort of drive your further identification of how you want to move forward with your process before you even really start talking about the pro forma and penciling that out, right? That these are sort of your early stage conversations with folks. Once you get to the point where it's talking about a pro forma, you're going to want to, again, based on what you're learning, figure out if there are needs for services, how you're going to bring in those services to make your pro forma kind of like balance, the numbers pencil out. So it would be like, then you partner with the Department of Public Health, the Department of Mental Health. You talk about the Department of Livable Housing and Livable Communities, so forth and so on. So you can kind of have all of those resources at your disposal as you're thinking about where you're penciling all of those pieces together. And those resources are available. I mean, you already talked to John Yaz from Father Bill's. I'm sure he shared, John Yazinski, sorry. I'm sure he shared the different components of what the pro forma, quite frankly, needs to be, and what the dollars are. It's difficult. It's really difficult. And so that's just really like the front door. We're not even talking about community opposition, which is where Sarah's slides come in. The slide deck, I would say, Sarah, as a resource, maybe when the slides are in a place where we can share them, it might be helpful as you all are having your early conversations with folks to say, hey, let's just kind of share this, because it level sets, it sucks the air out of the room. Sarah and I have been in rooms, and I'm sure you have too, where it gets pretty high, pretty quick. The emotions, they're for all sorts of reasons we don't need to get into, but the slide deck is meant to be a bit of a sucking that air out of the room and shifting that negative fear zero sum to what's the opportunity, how are we leading, what's the potential. So that would be another resource I might offer.
I would say the whole coalition, really. I mean, the reason that we play a role in bringing the coalition together is because I think what you said, like there may very well be right now we don't have perfectly mapped out exactly how a pipeline of supportive housing is developed, right? Every project right now has got to find its way through the system to get funded, to have the partnerships it needs to before all of that, to have the siting. So really what the coalition is doing is helping to unstick that, right? Like, we have a few years of experience developing a shared agenda, starting to build our sort of power as advocates. And I think there are really good opportunities. What we're putting our finger on in the next couple of years is really thinking about how we unstick at all the places where any given project could potentially be stuck, and provide more of that input to communities about the kind of housing they need so that they can be planning ahead, right? So that's the work that we are doing in the coming years. And so what I would say is, like, as you all are navigating your networks of developers, housing, everyone involved in the real estate and building industry, being, connecting them with opportunities to advocate with us would be really beneficial, because part of that's giving input that we could then use to improve the whole flow. Yeah, Jillian.
I was just curious about if there are any current large gaps that you guys are finding in current, just in general with housing pricing. And I know the extremely affordable end of this, I imagine, is a little bit harder to provide in some cases, but also there's the other end when it comes to funding for that. So I was just curious to hear your perspective on what gaps currently exist. Are there specific special needs communities that currently there are not many options available for them? Just curious.
Yeah, I'll start, and then I'd love to tag in Christi. I think the more barriers you have to housing stability, the harder it is, right? The bigger the gaps are, right? So we know that, just sort of in general, when people who have ADA needs are trying to navigate housing markets, they're finding challenges, right? Finding units. On the flip side, where we've made the biggest investments, we have the most opportunities. Like, one of the things we found is, we've made really significant investments in supportive housing for veterans. And as a result, like, people are finding housing. Like, that's a good thing. When you make big investments, what you get out of that is more plentiful housing opportunities, right? So I would say all of this is really intersectional. So I think that's a great question to ask, because I think, yes, there are those gaps. I think one of the bigger gaps we've identified too is just the ability to bring all of the funding needed together to make these projects work. So being able to bring and really weave together seamlessly the kinds of services that individuals and families need, the kind of where families are and want to live, and individuals are and want to live. So being able to really weave housing together with the services people need and the way that they are living their lives is probably one of the biggest sort of gaps and challenges. And yeah, Christi, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about some of the solutions that we've been working on, but I would say it's the actual alignment and collaboration is one of the things we find to be the biggest gap or barrier.
Yeah, I would just underscore the services. I mean, I would say that there's a lot of quasis that do some gap filling funding and loans and upfront sort of opportunities like CDAC and mass housing. So you know all the folks, but when you're talking about supportive housing, so just to put a little exclamation mark on it, the solution that is supportive housing works best when you're sort of thinking about those robust supportive services paired with the deeply affordable housing for a population that we typically consider to be very long-term, folks who are experiencing homelessness, have a disabling condition, as Sarah mentioned, including behavioral health, have a systems engagement, whether that be through the justice system or through the DCF system, or hospital healthcare system, right? So these are sort of what you call like your high utilizers, your folks when you think about Mass and Cass. We know by data, national data shows that the solution that is supportive housing is best served when you have the most vulnerable populations, as Sarah just mentioned. So what does that mean? You need a robust case management, case services, service dollar provision within the projects that will allow folks in the projects to thrive in community and be the best mom, dad, family, sister, daughter, all of those pieces, right? I'm in Bethesda, Maryland this week because we're trying to get Medicaid to cover those service gaps for folks families and individuals who are experiencing chronic and high need homelessness or are justice involved, right? So as Sarah mentioned, the veterans population, the reason why we've been so successful for veterans supportive housing is because they have an intervention called VASH, which is the Veterans Association of Supportive Housing. They have the supportive services built in to their projects right from the get-go, whereas all of the other populations have to beg, borrow, steal, sell their firstborn, whatever they need to do to be able to get those services. And so I would say a population that's also really struggling is family. We have an emergency assistance shelter in the state of Massachusetts, Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Nobody else has that. But as a result, we're not thinking really upstream about diverting families or getting them into housing. The sort of solution to that ending family homelessness has been shelter, which is not the same as housing. So really thinking about multi-unit and multi-bedroom family opportunities for deeply affordable housing with supportive housing would be something that I would say is a huge priority, particularly given our new arrival families and the sort of gaps that we're seeing on the ground right now in the Commonwealth. And so I will quickly just make a plug for the solution. We have right now in the Affordable Homes Act, we created a supportive housing, it's called now the Supportive Housing Trust Fund. It started out with a flexible pool, which is the language I wrote, but it's had the versions that Governor Healy wanted and then Senate and House. And so anyway, the long story short is there is now, when the governor signs the Affordable Homes Act, a trust fund specifically set up for supportive housing, which will blend all of those services, exactly the same model that the VASH, the veterans, are doing. And then we've seen some of it in the Bureau of Substance Use. They call it BSAS, where the funding is in for folks who are experiencing substance use disorder. So that's the goal of this fund. So that is a huge win for Massachusetts, for individuals who are going to be needing supportive housing, and something that you might want to carry with you as you're talking to communities and working with your teams.
So I have a quick question. This is amazing what you do and everything you have said, and Kimberly and Jill, you're really brave architects to work in this typology, because as you can tell, architects are really not that interested in it in general. My question is, I'm going to be hypothetical, not that I have this going on, but let's say a developer approached an architect and says, hey, I'm interested in working on affordable and supportive housing. What is there an ABC for them? Because you talked about a lot, having that supportive system in terms of healthcare, funding, all of that. Is there a roadmap we can go to and say, oh, let's go walk through the process and see who we need to talk to, when and how, especially for folks who have not done this? This is a new area for a lot of us and a lot of developers as well.
Yeah, I love the question and appreciate it. And I would say we need more of your minds around the tables. So yes, I will send some follow-up materials. The Corporation for Supportive Housing, the entity that I worked at before I came to United Way, does what they call a Supportive Housing Institute. And it really is about thinking about the developers, architects, property managers, and what are those steps that help develop that relationship. We always call it a marriage, because once you get into these sort of deals, you have to make sure that you're all really clear on your rules and what the expectations are. And so the short answer to your question is yes, there is. It has multiple variations, as you all would imagine. Kimberly, to your point about where you all come in the process, it depends, but it's a nice way to, there's the definite, we call them toolkits, we call them roadmaps. They are available, and it's a nice way to sketch out, okay, I have this opportunity, where do I go? What do I do next? How do I ask the right questions? How do I move this forward? So those resources are available.
That's awesome. That's great. Thank you. Thank
And then
you.
I'd add, one of the things that increasingly is featured in those resources is the community engagement beyond you know, the neighbors of the building. You know, so often our community engagement includes those neighbors that are in the region of the building. And I think just a very unique opportunity for architects in particular would be to engage. You know, let us know, you know, we can make connections for you, but those opportunities to engage with people who are prospective residents, or who are residents of other supportive housing developments, to be able to ask for their input. It can be very powerful, for your work. I think, you know, I think about all the ways it can be really powerful, like for the motivations that we have, the kind of job satisfaction we have as we get to know the people that will be living, and build housing that is to, you know, really meets their aspirations and their really unique input. There's, you know, the benefit to the community engagement process to be able to have that support early. There's the benefit to ultimately the people who will live there, that, you know, that input has been at the table. So yeah, I mean, we featured that in the sort of introductory remarks because we think it really is a good opportunity in the future more often to have people who are sort of who have experienced homelessness, who live in supportive housing, to be able to speak into what does the design of this look like? What are the amenities? What's included? So if that is, that's increasingly part of these roadmaps. And if you find yourself sort of like, we don't know where to go, you know, and the developer can't necessarily help you with it, we would love to be able to help fill that gap for you too, to connect you with those groups that can give you good insights around that. And it's just it's fun and rewarding, right? To be able to work with people who have such important insights into the building. So yeah, I would love to help you in that particular space.
And hopefully maybe we can invite some of them to our next roundtable in the future to hear their voices and especially talking about design, like what kind of amenities, because it will be different than probably a lot of us, given their lifestyle, what they've been through, and so on and so forth, their challenges. I see something in the chat, Christi, you shared with us.
Some CSH. Yeah, I just dropped some and you can go in the CSH website and play around. They also have a really nice data tool that gives you some high-level supportive housing need broken down by population in the Commonwealth. And so it's just a nice website to navigate. I would say the other really important role is that bringing the questions to your meetings, right? I mean, sometimes developers will come in with one lens, or there'll be a property or a piece of land that people will have one idea, but even just being able to open the conversation, the dialogue, and obviously you're curious about this, so you can, I think would be a game changer. Just a simple question around, have we thought about what the community needs? And have we thought about where we can best use this land to serve have the greatest impact? Those simple questions are often not asked, and projects get down a certain path and everybody's like, well, we have to do this because we're so far in. And so having those initial conversations right at the beginning doesn't have to be, you know, on a leading question, but the question is a really important one, and just arming yourself with some basic information about what could potentially be an opportunity, I think would be tremendously valuable for our neighbors who don't necessarily always have people thinking about them.
Thank you, that's helpful. We have a couple more minutes left. Anybody else have any questions or to Sarah and Christi, or Christi offered to send us some. Was that the link where it shows us the roadmap and steps if we have in conversation with developer? It's on that site.
And I can send you a more specific, where is the Supportive Housing Institute, but you can find it on the website. I thought I'd just drop it while I have you, just in case.
And also, I think examples of successful projects within the community that was struggling, and also that kind of helped to set a precedence to people who are new to this, to say it can happen. And
Yeah, they're
And
great
that's-
examples on the website, I would say, talking about new market tax credits, low-income housing tax credits, using community voice. They call their program Speak Up, which is a fabulous program where they've really involved people experiencing homelessness in their process. So I can send you some more, but it's also a really nice resource if you want to play around. They have everything that you could possibly imagine on their website. The other thing I would add from an architectural point of view, which might be of interest, is youth and young adult housing, supportive housing. There has been a tremendous prioritization around the youth and young adult in the feds. So that the Housing of Urban Planning and Development has prioritized youth and young adults and youth who are involved in the justice system. And I would say they have the most unique needs from an architectural design, because you have to think about the safety, and it can't just be like a regular building where people, I've done many projects for youth and young adults, which are so cool and so creative and could really use an architectural perspective. And that hasn't been a market, and it could be an emerging, exciting market, I would just say.
Yeah, that's great. And if it would be helpful to connect and have opportunities to see those, definitely reach out. I will say I haven't participated on a development team in that way for one, but I have toured some, and what Christy's saying is absolutely true. Really neat opportunities. I also dropped in the chat the website for the Supportive Housing Pipeline Coalition, as well as United Way's website. I mean, obviously, we would love to have you advocate with us and, talk to, we're not going to scale the pipeline without all kinds of developers joining us, right? It can't just be the couple that do this, in a really comfortable way. Like, we need more, and we need more, we need more service providers who want to step into the space and partner with developers. And so, we would love for you to be sharing the opportunity, advocating with us, yes, but also just sharing the opportunity with developers you work with to be advocating with us for this work. So I put the link to the coalition website, and then United Ways. Obviously, we would love to have you come to our events, support United Way, however you want to be involved in our networks as well. So put United Way's website on there too.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah.
Anybody else who have any final questions or?
Yeah, I was just gonna reinforce what you said, which is, we're visual learners. So, any good tours, or like you were saying, Sarah, maybe just example projects or something like that, like the one you were saying, the one in Beverly, those are always helpful for us, because if we can visualize a successful example, although every project's different, it is a helpful tool, I think.
Yeah, one of the things, so I was sort of starting to use some slides that are part of a deck that we have been working on that includes tips around how to make the case for housing, and also lots of those kinds of examples. And one of the things that will be part of the final deck is a repository of examples of projects. So that is absolutely going to be part of those resources that we're making available to the field. Right now, there's only one example in it because we're still working on the deck, but there are so many examples out there. We just haven't picked and photographed and dropped in all the examples that we want to have as part of it. So yeah, absolutely. We will have, we do have some new resources coming out that include examples, and I think also make the case that this is housing that's already exists in so many of our communities. Like, we're not proposing, when you're out there proposing something, you're not throwing spaghetti at the wall. This is something that we know how to do, and there's a roadmap for doing well, and many examples that are flourishing in the community already. So absolutely.
That's great. Thank you.
And I want to add also, like, working a little bit with developers, they really care about numbers. So data to them is so crucial. And like somebody mentioned, based evidence design. So without the numbers and the data, it's very hard for an architect to convince someone to go through a project. So as these examples come up and they're happening. And it's kind of hard because not everybody wants to share their numbers on these projects, but hopefully if we can get a couple of or few or maybe veteran projects where it's more accessible, it's more public data that we can share with our developers, more like the private developers, to make them feel like yes, you can do this because look at the numbers, you know.
Have you talked to Lindia Downey from Pine Street about those numbers? Because I would say Lindia has the most supportive housing inventory in the Commonwealth, and she is not shy about sharing her numbers. The more vulnerable your population within the building and project are, the caseload is typically around a 1 to 10. So think about that too in your numbers, but Lindia can give you, she can give you a ton of different projects throughout the Commonwealth with numbers. She's the best to do that. She has them at her fingertips.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. That's very helpful.
Yep.
Okay. I think we reached to our hour to end the session. Anybody else we haven't heard from, Greta or Wolfgang, would like to make a comment, or Emily who wants to have any questions before we close? Okay. Nice, and thank you.
Thank you so much. My apologies for being late, but I'm very much interested in actually supporting supporting the mission here. We are working with justice assistants in Rhode Island, and they have developed this concept of habitat for justice, which is quite fascinating and something that also could be actually discussed on a larger platform here. So their idea is to involve people who are in their justice program, to provide them with a trade education at the same time while they are actually creating housing for themselves and their families. And
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's quite a fascinating approach, and they just started with this initiative. Well, but thank you so much for your work and for the presentation. I make sure that I listen to the recording because I missed the majority of your talk.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you, and no worries. Well, I'm glad you caught some of it here, and it is recorded. So it's and if you don't mind, if we can, some of us, if we want to learn more about what you just talked about, to contact you.
Sure, absolutely. I'd be more than happy to share what we have done so far, and what we and our collaboration with the with justice assistants. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And then anything else before we close? I know you need to run to your next meetings, Christi and Sarah. Thank you so much for your time. You've been amazing, and thank you that you are very approachable. So I encourage anybody listening to this or to this recording not to be too shy to contact both Christi and Sarah to understand what's going on, as it is very challenging to all of us at this point. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.